All right, everybody. Entrepreneurial Appetite is a series of events dedicated to building community, promoting intellectualism, and supporting Black businesses. And just to give you an idea of how we got started, was it 2018? There was a brother by the name of Mark's Outing who made a post on Facebook Live calling for support of his burger joint here in San Antonio, Texas. And me and my homeboy got a group of 30 to 40 young professionals together for a conversation at his burger joint with the state representative, Barbara Gervin Hawkins. And so since then, we have evolved into a book club, into book conversations. And so for 2023, we are focusing more on entrepreneurs as well as authors, but we really want to give you all some exposure to folks who can talk about business in ways that sometimes Black folks don't have access to. And so part of our mission to support Black businesses extends beyond just the traditional sense of someone having their small business or someone having their tech business. I think about that institutionally. And so those of you who are supporters of the show, a portion of what you give goes to an endowment that I started at my alma mater, North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University, called the From A&T to PhD Endowed Scholarship. It was started by me and two of my friends who all started at A&T for undergrad, but were able to matriculate into our doctoral studies. And so this is our way of giving back to our beloved alma mater, our HBCU. And so those of you who love the show Entrepreneurial Appetite, I encourage you to go check out the African Americans in Sport podcast, which was started by myself and my good friend, Dr. Brandon Crooms, who was a guest on the show tonight, who was a viewer tonight, and my other homeboy, Dr. Alvin Logan. And we talk about the broad experiences of African Americans in sport, whether that be players, former players, people who never played but work in the business side of sports. And we try to take what we do in the classroom as faculty and academics and bring that to a wider audience. And without further ado, I would like to introduce everyone to our guest for today, Cleve Mesidor, who is an author, an entrepreneur, and the executive director of the Blockchain Foundation. And Cleve, before we get started into all of the amazing things that you've been doing business-wise and policy-wise and advocacy for Black and Brown folk in the context of blockchain technology and Bitcoin and all of these terms that we're going to break down tonight, just tell us a little bit about who you are and how you got to be where you are and what you're doing.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm thrilled to be here. As you mentioned, I'm Cleve Mesidor. I would say, a crypto pioneer revolutionary. I've been working in crypto for about 6 years now. Apologies, of course, right now, the background noise comes, but I've been working in crypto for about 6 years. My background is in public policy. So I worked in Congress and served in the Obama administration. It was actually during the Obama administration in 2013 that a friend had a Bitcoin project and asked me to help with a press release. And this wasn't a friend in the Obama administration. This was just a personal friend. I had never heard of Bitcoin. So of course I helped with the press release, did my research, and that activity planted a seed. All of a sudden, Bitcoin was everywhere. I was seeing it everywhere. And this was 2013. And so around 2015, I became more curious and started learning more. And by 2016, I was down that rabbit hole. And by 2017, I had decided to work full-time in crypto. So this has been my focus. But as I shared, government and public policy has been, my space for a long time. But I found there was a lot of synergies between what I was hoping to achieve in government and now what I can achieve in the whole blockchain cryptocurrency space. I'm also a Howard University grad, so shout out to all my HU folks there. HU, I'm sure I hear my back. And I'm also an AKA, so skiwi to my soul out there. And, I'm very focused on empowerment and social justice. It's interesting. I used to say that, I was very in love with European Newton and the whole Black Panther movement and just that whole era of just revolution. And I used to be jealous that I wasn't born around that time when I could have really had an impact. And I feel like crypto has given me that. It's like this movement, right? This really raw and gritty, but new, and this new frontier where you can actually make a difference. And so for me, crypto is so many different things, but don't believe the hype of what you see on TV. And one of the connections here was, last year I started working on a book called We Are Crypto, to focus on the history and the plight of Black and Latino people in crypto. Because as you know, the white paper came out in 2008, but we've been here since 2008. And regardless of what people say, and unfortunately, I'm still working on finishing it up. But the reason it's been delayed is because along the way, I connected with an old CNN pally who's a producer, and we're also working on a documentary as well. So we, in the next few months, not only will the book come out, but a documentary will be coming out as well called We Are Crypto, focusing on our footprint. So I'm excited to be here tonight and excited to dive into the conversation.
So I want to just add, right? When you were saying that you're a cryptocurrency pioneer, I don't want that to get lost on the audience, because and you'll get more into this history later, but Bitcoin started in 2008. And so you were saying that you've been like deeply involved with cryptocurrency for 6 years. And so think about the long span, about how long currencies have existed. Like, how long has a dollar existed, right? So imagine if you were someone who was working with developing the concept of the dollar, right? Like 5 years into its existence. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want that to get lost, because if Bitcoin is around for 1,000 years and you got in like year 5 or 6, you know what I mean? Like, that's real pioneering, but we may not have the lens to see that right now. Before we get in, go ahead. I'm listening.
No, I definitely, and when I got into this space, there are, Black leaders who had been in the space 5 years before I came along, who really ushered me. So, it's, but I want people to make sure people know it's not too late, right? It is still early. Sometimes people get FOMO, oh my God, I missed out. But you haven't missed out anything. This is the starting line.
Yeah, for sure. And if we like 2008, it's not that long ago. So no. I think one of the things that you had a lot of older people who feel like they've missed it, and maybe because of the value has gone up so high at some points, but we'll get into that later. So one thing I do want you to kind of talk about like your lens for justice and equity based upon your background, coming from Haiti and the different experiences that you had coming here. And so before I want to make sure that the audience knows that I did get Cleve's first book. I think it's your first book. Yeah. And I learned so much about what was going on in Haiti and your personal background with that. I think it's important that we highlight like how your origin story plays into like what you're doing with cryptocurrency right now.
Yeah, so I went into politics wanting to change the world, right? I not only worked in Congress and served in the Obama administration, I also ran for city council in DC in 2007. So I've always had a desire, a thirst to make things better, to create a better world. And I would say that is rooted in my Haitian background, in my Haitian ancestry. Haiti has, a beautiful history of a revolutionary spirit. Not only did we, win our independence in 1804, we are credited with a lot of other countries that we are the reason that they were able to gain their independence, because Haiti was a founding member of the United Nations. When you look at Israel and Greece, and when you look at the our, our contributions to Venezuela, and others, many others. So I always like to say that, freedom is our most precious legacy as Haitians. And I always like to channel my ancestors, not just Toussaint Louverture, but that everybody knows of, but there's also Henri Christophe and Dessalines. But I feel like those, that is the lineage I come from, and always wanting to make a change. I was born in Haiti and I moved to the US when I was 8. So I grew up in New York City. I have been going back to Haiti as an adult just to try to make an impact. I went back in 2013 for about 7 months just to reconnect back to my homeland. But yeah, that prism of, empowerment and making a difference, I was hoping to find that in Washington, and I really got disillusioned. Washington politics is a place where people do earnestly want to come in wanting to make a change, but Washington can change you if you don't watch out. Right? And I was so lucky that I learned about the Bitcoin and the white paper when I did. And when I struggled with, if I wanted to stay in Washington, how I wanted to change things, luckily, the whole crypto space was there for me just to figure it out. Most people think of crypto only as a store of value, right? It's so much more than that, right? Yes, it is a new financial asset class, but it's also a technology when it comes to product development. It is also an ecosystem, a marketplace. Right? It is not just one thing. There are so many different access points. But I like to say that, a lot of people come because of store value, right? Because of the price of the various cryptocurrencies. But a lot of us come because of decentralization. Decentralization, right? Empowering the grassroots entities, right? A shift away from centralized entities that control everyone, the intermediaries that become our brokers. And, decentralization, who are these brokers? Where, if we can, eliminate them, diminish them, we can give more power to people. It's organizations like the Red Cross, right? Why do you need to give them your money so then they can give them to the people who need them? Because we know that they take, by the time it gets to whoever you need it to get to, those groups never get it. And as a Haitian American, I can tell you that Haiti, by the time Haiti gets the billions and trillions that are sent to Haiti, they get pennies on the dollar, right? So we have these large intermediaries, right? That the ones that, tax us to pay our own money. You give the bank $100, but they charge you a $12 fee just to hold your money. And then they charge you fees to actually, if you accidentally bounce a check. But that $100 ends up being $10 just because you're paying these intermediaries. It doesn't mean that intermediaries are not important, but when they actually become an obstacle to people, right? When it makes it hard for people to be able to thrive and live, in dignity, then that is a problem. So for me, decentralization is my North Star, right? It is that golden rule for me. That is focused on empowering, everyone, but certainly groups that have been marginalized, that lack the power, right? Because decentralization means you do not need permission from anyone to build on blockchain, to own cryptocurrencies. You don't need a degree, you don't need a certificate. There's no all of these arbitrary gates that are intended to keep people out. It is accessible to anyone, everyone. And that, for me, is the game changer. You'll hear a lot about, privacy, and privacy is important. It's one of the things that we gain here. But decentralization, for me, is the game changer. That is where we actually make, a new asset class, a new technology, a new ecosystem accessible to everyone.
I think that's good. We're going to get back into that conversation about decentralization versus maybe your North Star. What's the difference between your North Star being decentralization versus investment? I think that's a crucial conversation for us to have. But before we do that, can you give us like the historical overview of blockchain technology, right? Just quickly, where did it begin and where is it now and how did it get there?
Yeah. Yeah. So, the arc of, and I use the word crypto blankly for the space. So when I say crypto, I mean Web3, I mean blockchain, I mean cryptocurrency, I mean digital assets, right? It's the whole gamut for me. So for me, it's important to understand that the arc of crypto is not that long, right? It is a new, it is something new. It's a new industry, it's a new product, it's a new asset class that has quickly transformed the world. Right. So what is origins? In 2008, right, a white paper was written. Think of a white paper is just an academic paper. Many of us wrote them in grad school or even in school. So there's a lot of talk about who Satoshi Nakamoto is, who was the author of the white paper. Take that off the table for now, right? I believe it was a group of people, but a white paper was actually sent to a cryptography listserv. And that white paper essentially said, let's build a cashless payment system. And why? The white paper says, because of a lot of problems within our current financial system. One of them was the issue of the double spend. And for people, if people need to understand the double spend, think of it personally. How much we fudge our credit cards, we know how to make our $5,000 limit to probably be, 8,000 if we needed to be, right? We know when to make purchases, when we can go over our limit, and they will let us go over our limit, right? So a simplified way to say, this white paper really focused on, one, creating a cashless payment system, and then two, solving financial problems like the issue of the double spend. Right? And then it went to a cryptography listserv. This is just math geeks, people who are just about, this long arc of solving problems, cryptography. And the people on the listserv said, oh, this is interesting. Let's create it. And that cashless payment system was Bitcoin, right? So in the fall of 2008, white paper went to the cryptography listserv. By 2009, just a few short months later, the first Bitcoin was mined. Right? That means a group of people read this white paper and said, oh my God, we want to create this. This is a good thing. And they did. And then in 2009, the first Bitcoin was mined. And again, not to get too technical for people, when the first Bitcoin was mined, it was all about props, right? It was all about credits. Like you got a Bitcoin from solving complex problems, and that was your reward, right? So the Bitcoin didn't have value yet. But as people, and especially again, origins with cryptographers, people who are, focus on solving economic problems, this became a big thing, right? How do I get a Bitcoin? So Bitcoin had no value until a few years later in 2011. 2011 was the first time Bitcoin was worth $1. It was the first time when there was any real value to it. And so this thing that evolved, again, it was intended to be a cashless payment system. It's evolved and people are rallying around it, mining Bitcoins, and now it's worth $1. And I think people may hear about the story about the pizza guy, the guy who, bought all these pizzas with Bitcoin, $10 here, $20 here. And, today, he bought a lot, millions of dollars of Bitcoin. If people had not done that, we would not be where we are today. Because that was the proof of concept we needed, right? So and I'm gonna detour here real quickly. For everyone who said, oh my God, I wish I had bought Bitcoin at $1, I would have been a millionaire. No, you wouldn't, because by the time it hit $10, you would have been like, it's never going further. I'm selling my Bitcoin. If it hit 200, you'd be like, oh my God. Wait, so this is not a get rich scheme. This is something that people believed in this was about solving problems along the way. And this was about a new paradigm that, because people kept saying, oh, this is interesting, let me learn more, let me contribute to the development of this, it gained value. And then, so in December 2017, the best and worst thing happened to crypto. Bitcoin hit $20,000. All of a sudden, Wall Street started paying attention. No, Wall Street was not involved in crypto in its inception. They were late to the game, like all of you on the on the call who may be thinking, oh my God, I lost it. Celebrities late to the game, wealthy executives late to the game. I think December 2017 was when people were just like, wait, right? And so it's important to now go back to who are the people who actually created the movement, right? We know that there's a cryptography listserv that helped to actually say, okay, let's look at the math here, let's look at, you know, the equation here, let's build this. But when you had was a lot of libertarians, anarchists, you know, these people called cypherpunks, you know, Black libertarians, you know, revolutionaries from all over the world who were just like, oh, this is great. And that first movement of folks, it was very diverse, right? There was a lot of people in Asia, a lot of people in the continent of Africa, a lot of people, you know, in parts of the Middle East. So despite what you hear today of people painting this as a industry for and by white males, it is not. There's no evidence that shows that white males were at the inception of this. In fact, there's the only data we have shows that Black and Latino communities are the greatest adopters of cryptocurrency. We are the nerve center of adoption. We are the earliest adopters. There's no data that shows that, you know, Caucasians are holding crypto in large numbers, right? So when you look at who were embracing this from the beginning, it tends to be people who were locked out of the traditional system, who resisted the traditional system, who did not trust the traditional system, right? And then today, as we've seen, you know, this space evolve, you know, I will be honest, right? We've moved away from the premise of that original white paper. We have moved away quite a bit. Yeah, yes, I think we fulfilled the promise because Bitcoin is a payment system, even though we don't use it as such, right? It's very it's difficult to transact in it, and especially with it having so much value, that makes it a deterrent from people even wanting to transact in it. But we did do that, and along the way, we created a whole new paradigm. Along the way came tokens, came, you know, stable coins, came NFTs, right? So is that a good thing? Yes, because it was really about, you know, a group of people coming to build a new financial structure, and we continue to do that. We continue to add to that.
How do you see Black folks using blockchain technology, cryptocurrency in the future? Number one, I just got to point out that I was blown away by your revealing that the data doesn't show that white men have been the primary adopters of the technology. And it's just, you know, that being the case, like how does, I think I want to turn from like a historical lens to like a futurist lens. And like, what do you see in the future for Black folk with blockchain technology? I think specifically even getting beyond just we're going to get money off of this, but really in some ways to like break the wheel, right? And to use it intentionally as a tool for decentralization that benefits us, but not in a greedy way.
Well, I would say, you know, you said let's shift from a historical lens to a future lens. I'd like to look at the now. Right now, we are the nerve center of adoption, right? People keep wanting to take that away from us or gloss over it like it's nothing. No, you may have Elon Musk trying to accumulate as much crypto as he can. That's just one person, one centralized entity, right? Collectively, Black and Latino communities in the US, we are where, you know, we are leveraging, we are not only holding cryptocurrencies, but we're leveraging it to solve problems, to tackle inequities, right? So right now, the good things, the great things, the important things, the unique things that are happening in this space are coming from us. And let's be honest, quite a few of the things that you've seen that have evolved, made people millions, were ideas they stole from our community. Right? I won't name names, but they know who they are. And so right now, when you look at, you know, when you look at how we're interacting with the currency, right? I'll point to a project called Oak Currency in Oakland. where, you know, Black developers went back home to Oakland and worked with the mayor, the city council, Black leaders there to figure out how to create a currency that would empower Oakland, right? This is about efficiency and optimization. This is about economic empowerment, right? And they created Oak, and Oak currency is a community-led project about empowerment, right? There's not millions there. It doesn't get money. No one, you know, the members of Congress won't open the doors to learn about Oak, but it is one of the most concrete projects that is viable. Like Tavonia Evans created Guap Coin, a Black woman 8 years ago, you know, sought out to create a cryptocurrency, and she did. Today, you can download the Guap wallet, buy Guap. You know, that is not nothing. That is huge, and that's what drives a lot of us to this space. We want to focus on all of these large exchanges that have, you know, gain a lot of money. The reason they have a lot of money is because they have a lot of venture capitalists who give them a lot of money. But initially, yeah, and even with a lot of these projects, when you look at who are their user base, they don't have that huge of a user base, but they get a lot of money for the things that we're doing to solve problems in our community. So when you look at, you know, across the spectrum of, you know, Black and Latino communities and the products, like there's a project called Dada by Beatriz Ramos in, you know, in an NFT space. And she was doing NFTs before Dapper Labs, right? Before CryptoKitties. And nobody gives her credit for that. No one's throwing millions at her for that, because she was creating a community to empower, you know, artists and making sure that they actually had, you know, had the resources and capacity, right? So while we're using the technology to solve problems, to create an infrastructure, all of the attention goes to all of these really experimental efforts out there. And then the other thing I would say as well is, let's be honest, Black people have made money off of, you know, Bitcoin. Like, I was only able to in 2017 decide to shift here because of Bitcoin, right? So, but the burden on, you know, communities of color, especially Black and Latino communities, when you make millions or thousands, right, it's not just yours. I'll give you an example of the Cybercode twins, America and Penelope Lopez. They're two millennials out of California, badass. They are so incredible, and they were early Bitcoin adopters. They're developers. They're doing amazing things. They talk about how, you know, the money they've made in Bitcoin. One of the biggest examples is they help their mother out of foreclosure, right? That was how, you know, helping their families, how they spend that money. You know, there's another woman, she calls herself a crypto mom, and there was an NBC article about her, and she talks about how between her portfolio of NFTs and tokens, she's made, you know, a hefty, you know, revenue monthly. But how has she used that revenue to help her parents retire, right? To pay student loan debt for herself and her siblings. So when we look at building wealth for our communities, that means different things to different people. It doesn't mean, oh, I'm going to make $1 million and I'm going to go buy a yacht. I wish we could do that. Right? Those millions are going to go to all of, you know, our communities have been so economically, you know, challenged and, you know, and deprived from society, that when we do make money, we have to first help our community, our people out of poverty, and also empower ourselves, and also to actually create a pipeline for generational wealth. That means, you know, you have to put that money in a college fund for someone. That means you're going to make sure somebody goes to college and make sure somebody just goes to camp and all of these resources. So this whole paradigm of wealth looks very different for us in the crypto space than, you know, these imaginary crypto bros that are out there that, you know, they're Lamborghinis. Because for us, it was always about empowerment.
I like that term, crypto bros. So I want to get into some conceptual things, right? So what is blockchain technology? What is Bitcoin? what is cryptocurrency, and maybe some of the other terms like NFT. Like how are those different and related? Just so that we can get a baseline understanding conceptually.
Yeah, so I like to use this example, especially in mixed company when we have very newbies, right? I like to tell people I always like to start with blockchain, right? So think of blockchain as technology. It's technology that securely verifies information, facilitates the exchange of facilitates the exchange of value without third parties. So very simple, let's go back to that. Blockchain is technology that securely verifies information, facilitates the exchange of value without third parties. Right. Those are three components. Securely verifies information, that's the ledger you hear about. Facilitates the exchange of value, that's cryptocurrencies. Without third parties, that's decentralization. The tenets are very, very basic, right? So that's the technology that is vast and wide and not one thing. Now, what's the connection of cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and ETH and Litecoin and all of these others that you hear about? Think of those cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, especially like the light. The light is beautiful and bright. And hell, you can buy a light bulb for $1 or $100, depending on your, but the light is beautiful and bright, but what powers light, right, is electricity. So think of blockchain as the thing that powers cryptocurrencies. But that's not even the most interesting part. The most interesting part is think of everything we do with electricity other than light. Think of what a waste it would be if all we did with electricity was light. And that's the power of blockchain technology, that it is so much more than cryptocurrencies. It is so much more than tokens, right? The potential is limitless. And that's where we actually see a lot of interesting things. Now, you mentioned NFTs, non-fungible tokens. NFTs are very interesting. NFTs came out of the whole Ethereum ecosystem. You know, at the heart of it is smart contracts. And so NFTs have been, in my opinion, over-commercialized, overhyped. NFTs, whatever you've heard about NFTs, is just, NFTs have become like the ultimate get-rich scheme. Let's be honest. Unless you're an artist, you're probably not gonna get rich from an NFT. And that is not how you should look at NFTs. NFTs provided a pathway for creators to be able to, one, protect their intellectual property, then monetize it, create a marketplace, right? Think of all of those artists, whether they draw, they're a musician, actors who couldn't, who don't get royalties, right? Whose work is stolen all the time because they have no way to protect their intellectual property, whose music ends up on these, on our bands, and they have no way of defending themselves because they can't afford attorneys, right? So now what NFTs did, it gave artists a way to, one, digitize their work, but more importantly, protect their intellectual property before putting it out there, as well as monetize it by being able to create a marketplace. So for all of those artists out there and creators who had that pain point, that was the game changer for them, right? Because they learned a new skill, right? Because they had to, for the most part, learn MetaMask or get an OpenSea account, all of these things. But along the way, what they gained was the ability to protect their intellectual property and monetize. That's not what you see the hype around NFTs. But here's why, I always say that's the value of NFTs. Because think of, your cousin out there who's an artist who draws and puts her stuff online all the time. And then all of a sudden you see somebody, it ends up on somebody's art and she has no way of protecting it. So not only now she can actually digitize it, but she can code that smart contract to say, okay, I'm gonna sell it to Cleve for $100, right? Now in that smart contract, she can actually code it to say, if Cleve sells it in the secondary market for $10,000, she still gets a cut of that. She can even code it to be like, in a third sale that happens, she still gets paid, right? That is value to people who always got screwed. Even if they did get paid for their art, by the time it became millions, they no longer own it. and NFTs, non-fungible tokens, being able to actually have that capacity of a small contract allows them to continue to reap the benefits of their work, right? So when everyone wants to create an NFT to do what, that's cute. But the real game changer for this was a tool for the creators who have been screwed over and over. And that is game changing. That is a story we need to tell first and foremost before all of this other stuff. And I have to tell you, I really don't care about Jay-Z's NFT. You've made enough money. Thank you. You know what? You need to be helping some of these young artists, focus on their NFTs. So for people out there, I don't care about Gucci's NFT. If you are wasting your money on that, then you know what? You could, I said, no judgment. This is the no judgment phase. I am all about using this tool to empower creators. We are a creative and entrepreneurial community. We need to make sure these tools are helping us not to make the wealthy even more wealthy. That just doesn't help us. That doesn't get us out of some of the situations we're in.
I have a sister-in-law. I should just call her my sister. I love her like she's my sister. And she's an artist. And her husband, who I consider to be my brother, has been trying to convince her, like, yo, think about the NFT thing. So in your experience, how do you, I don't want to say convince, but how do you make the whole idea of turning your work into an NFT more comfortable for the creator? Because maybe they're just so focused on their art, or it's just a new medium that people are uncomfortable with new mediums. So how do you get that comfortability start?
Well, I'm sure, again, if more people had this conversation I just had with your sister in love instead of in law, then she'd probably be more open to it. Oftentimes people hear about NFTs. Yeah, you create NFTs, you're gonna make $1 million. Oh my God, you're gonna make all of this. Well, that doesn't tell the person how, right? And if you're a creator, it's not that simple. You've been toiling in the vineyards for too long to be like, whatever. Right? So I think for a lot of creators, the reason they're just like, yeah, whatever, keep it moving, is because they really don't hear about the non-sexy aspects of these things. Right? So what I found with creators, there are a lot of creator communities where they're teaching themselves MetaMask, right? Where they're actually teaching themselves how to digitize their work. They're really, so what I would recommend for your sister-in-law and others who may be tuning in is find a creator community, a local creator community that is leveraging NFTs. And tons of them exist. Even within the Ethereum ecosystem, there are lots of tools just for creators to learn how to leverage NFTs to digitize their work, to monetize it. So I think, your sister-in-law would be much more open to those. But I've met lots of creators who they themselves have created their own communities so they can teach themselves, how to use MetaMask, how to use the different platforms. But also I would say within the Black community, we actually have, quite a few platforms that are intended for Black creators, and so as a open sea for us, by us, and one of them is called Black At. And so it's, we have tons of these communities for us to really help to teach our community.
So the audience knows, before Cleve and I got on, I gave her a run through of all the questions I'm going to ask. And I told her, I was like, the question I'm going to ask is, can Black people get their own money? But I mean, you just explained how blockchain technology affords us to do so much more than the currency. So I guess the way I want to amend that question is can Black people get their own money? But then what else can we get from blockchain technology? And how can we use that to improve our lives?
Yeah. So I mentioned Ocurrency, which is an example of, a currency. And let's be honest, this whole concept of a local currency is not new, right? When you look at the origins of money in the US, there was a time when there were tons of currencies before, the US dollar emerged as the currency. And so we've been talking about, communities, economically depressed communities, and how we can actually better help our communities through having a local currency that can help with some of that. So, old currency is one of the examples. Guap coin by Tavonia Evans is another example of us creating a currency. Harlem just created Harlem. In Harlem, there are some leaders who just created Harlem coin to actually specifically help entrepreneurs as a way for, as a way to create access to capital for local entrepreneurs in Harlem. So this whole concept of, how to use it as a currency to help with empowerment of communities, right? That is there, right? And so the other ways that we're using it is obviously the NFT community, entrepreneurs leveraging it to digitize their work, but also, it's a payments platform. When you think about all of the entrepreneurs who have their e-commerce business, their side hustles, anyone right now, whether you're a nonprofit or for-profit, you can create a merchant account to actually accept cryptocurrency. That is so easy. There's so many out there. I always hate to mention some. I'd say BitPay is one of the easiest ones that people can do, but one of the easiest things is to create a merchant account to accept payments, because payments is actually what cryptocurrency has done is created digital cash infrastructure for entrepreneurs. The cost of doing business as an e-commerce business is expensive. That's why you have so many people don't accept credit cards, because it is extremely expensive. And so, when you create a merchant account, you can accept it, but also you can have a payment structure, and there are also ways to even leverage stable coins to do that as well. If for entrepreneurs that may want to transact and want to have a more stable currency. The good thing to know is if you create a merchant account, easy to turn back to cash, easy to go back and forth. So no one has to be concerned about, oh my God, what am I going to do with, a whole bunch of, E for, Bitcoin. Hopefully nobody's saying that, but payments is another option. And especially when you look at people of color tend to be attracted to emerging technologies as well as emerging industries. And we know people who operate in the cannabis space have a hard time with payments and also, getting, banking. So there's a lot of opportunities for that. And when you look at the work that's being done in DeFi, right? DeFi is reimagining banking, reimagining, loans and how we actually do some of these lending aspects that we do. And that ecosystem is also very diverse as well. I know there's a gentleman called Jamari Peterson. He used to lead Snowball. Well, actually, he still does lead Snowball. But one of the things that he's doing now is really trying to create a way to onboard more Black and Latino folks onto DeFi and really be more like the conduit to explain how it is, train people and educate people. So, DeFi is another space. And obviously, when people think of, Web3, they think of, the metaverse and decentralized autonomous organizations. DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, think of them as, like co-ops, right? For most people there's 20 of us, we all put $20 in the pot, so that creates a treasury. We decide who gets it when and who gets it where, how we fill the treasury. That's exactly what a DAO is. It's an alternative way to actually fund projects and also, create a treasury to actually move things forward, but also, to run a project by consensus, by, governance, creating a governance for people to actually, learn about what the options are. There's a lot of hype about the metaverse. I am not a fan. Right now, what we have is not a metaverse. Right? There's a metaverse out there. It's always existed in gaming. The gaming community has a long arc, and within the gamers have created a world, a virtual world, and they actually do have, they've created avatars and personalities, and they do interact and transact, right? That community is probably the greatest example. And the metaverse is what we're trying to envision with decentralization in place, right? How can we embed, microtransactions with cryptocurrency? How can we use smart contracts so we can have more authentic peer-to-peer interactions? What we have right now is not that. What we have right now is a space where the people are giving a lot of biometrics, a lot of data. Well, who the hell is connecting that? Because last I checked, I came into crypto because I didn't want somebody to own my data and sell it. And when you look at, some of the metaverse communities that exist, like Decentraland and Sandbox and others, the data shows the amount of users, in a given time is no more than like 100, because they don't have the bandwidth yet, right? Because it is not, so huge. So even when you have the big brands, going into the metaverse, it's such a get rich scheme, because you have to buy land in the metaverse. There was, all this hype about buying land next to Snoop and Sandbox in that universe. Anyone out there, if you are really thinking about buying land in the metaverse, you better look at the analytics, right? Right now, there is not enough bandwidth to even have that amount of capacity for it to be worth it. And what we're building, again, is a data dump that people don't know where that's going. Like I say, we are about 10 years from a decentralized metaverse where people can actually, have their data protected, where people can actually have a community where that it is, truly decentralized, where people can participate, everybody can be empowered, right? So right now it's a lot of FOMO, a lot of hype. But, this is the beginning, right? This is the early phases, and we're getting the kinks out. Unfortunately, I think this is one of the areas where people are getting screwed quite a bit, because they don't understand that this thing right now, it's not real. And the one thing to know about the metaverse, you don't have to have a decentralized metaverse that's, is crypto native, right? Because that's what Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook. So Meta is a metaverse that is not powered by crypto per se, right? The metaverse is going to be powered by AI, machine learning, all integrating all VR and all of these things. So, but again, I say we have so many issues with how Mark Zuckerberg has treated the data we've given him, and we're giving him more. Like, come on, people, but that's one of the challenges with trying to create a different world. At least in the, we've seen adoption across the continent of Africa, across Latin America, which is huge and vast, because wherever people have been locked out, they embrace new approaches, new tools. In the US, we've seen the not huge adoption the way we've seen abroad, because people are somewhat comfortable. Even though people hate their bank accounts, they'd rather stay with Bank of America than go something that they don't know, right? They'd rather stay with, Mark Zuckerberg because they know Facebook, even if they're not. And that is just human nature. And but also, let's be honest, that's what hurts people of color often, because we're entrepreneurial, we're innovative, but we're risk averse, right? And there's a reason for that, right? We've been told that, don't step too far out, see what happens. And we have a history of, and especially in this country, the arc of when we've built strong communities, when we've been profitable, white supremacists have come in and actually, stepped in and blown it up, or tons of Black Wall Street is a great example. So we have a reason to say it's not that we don't think we're going to be successful. It's the fact that, where history has taught us that success doesn't work for us here. Right? But this is a new time. Right now, when you look at the demographics of the US or even the world, it's younger and browner. It is where, people care about inclusion a lot more than they used to, barring the fact that, it seems like every other month we're seeing, some young 20-something white boy go into a Black community and try to shoot it out. But I would say that, hopefully those are anomalies, that, when it looks like millennials and Gen Z, there is more of a desire to look at inclusion in a much more thoughtful way. So as we're looking at a world that is much more diverse and inclusive, we have to be prepared to, be a bit more bolder when it comes to taking some of these risks to step out and take the lead.
So you mentioned Mark Zuckerberg, and when I think about Zuckerberg and the privacy issues, I remember he get called to Congress a few times. Yeah. And it makes me think about the part in your book where you talked about some of the issues you had with the Democratic Party, right? And you go in and talk about the need for a third party. And before I got to the point where you talked about Andrew Yang, I had already thought in my head, I got to ask her this question. So I'm glad you put it in the book too. So talk about as someone who's worked in politics and in policy, talk about your thoughts on, Andrew Yang, the Forward Party, and his sort of like political philosophy and how you see that intersecting with blockchain technology and Black and Brown communities.
Yeah. So, as I've shared, I worked in Washington politics, worked in Congress. I worked for Barbara Lee and Betty McCollum. I served in the Obama administration. I worked on national campaigns. So, politics is in my blood. I was a fan of Andrew Yang when he ran for president, less so when he ran for mayor of New York City. But, I do think that what galvanized people around Andrew Yang is his focus on the future, his focus on innovation, right? It was a very future forward look, right? Right now, oftentimes when we look at, changing the world or new policies or an agenda, they're really focused, they're looking back, right? They're looking back on the issues that we need to fix that we didn't fix, right? How can we reach back, right? It's sort of like the whole financial exclusion issue, inequities, right? Washington just thinks that if they can fix banks, that will solve everything. That, if we make banking better, Black and Brown people will just go to banks and problem solved. Well, no, we abandoned banks a long time ago. We don't trust them. We're never going to go back to them. But we have a whole government that's still focused on where we were, not where we want to be, right? So I love that Andrew Yang and the Yang Gang really were thinking about the future, and universal basic income was part of that conversation, right? Even though, it's not it was just one of those solutions that forced us to actually think about elsewhere. I will say that, for me, in terms of how we create a better world through politics, so we just swore in a new Congress. The last 2 weeks I've been to Congress for swearing in ceremonies and open houses. I went to the office of Maxwell Frost, the new Gen Z that was, Gen Z member of Congress, first Gen Z member of Congress, youngest member of Congress. And, just to see, the momentum and the excitement around his office, but also some of the other new members, right? There are quite a few new members of Congress, even though Democrats have lost the House, Republicans now control the House, Democrats maintain control over the Senate. What I learned from my tenure in Washington politics is that people love to say this, right? They love to say, technology doesn't solve problems, right? People do. And I agree with that, but I have to tell them, government doesn't solve problems, people do, right? So policy and innovation have to be tools that empower people. And when they don't, that's a problem, right? And I have to say, Washington right now, it continues to fail to empower people. Right? So one big example I have is when it comes to crypto, right? When it comes to crypto, last year, actually the last year and a half, we've known that Black and Latino communities are the center of adoption. I've gone to Washington to talk to staffers and members, especially from the Black caucus, Hispanic caucus, I'm like trying to get them to, to open their doors to Black leaders and Latino leaders to hear about our projects. Oh my God, it's like crickets. Very few inroads, but they're quick to, open their doors to Coinbase's CEO, Brian Armstrong. They were quick to open their door to FTX CEO, Sam Bankman-Fried. CBC, there were many CBC members and in the leadership that lined up, Democrats lined up to do that. And so, and mind you, shout out to, Congresswoman Joyce Beatty, who opened her doors to Black and Latino community, saying like, what do we need? What do we do? Let's figure it out. I'm concerned about the problems, but I want to help my community. Same thing with Senator Cory Booker, who I organized a virtual roundtable with Black and Latino leaders. So it's not all of them, but for the most part, though, they seem much more concerned about opening their doors to wealthy executives with big campaign donations than it was for people of color. And that really hurt my heart. We even had quite a few of our Black leaders who came from some of these member states, and who could not believe that many of them weren't even interested in having these conversations. And one of the biggest problems is, like, what does Washington focus on when it comes to crypto? So when it comes to crypto, you hear a lot about, is it a commodity or is it a security? And that's a conversation about which regulatory body should lead, the CFTC or the SEC. Oh my God, ETF conversation. We passed a Bitcoin futures ETF. Now we want a Bitcoin spot ETF. Well, you know what? I'm from the Caribbean, and I would tell you those are first world problems, right? So if you only care about wealthy people, those are the issues you prioritize. And those are the issues that they've been prioritizing in Congress. And I say, where are the conversations about access to capital, right? We know that the nerve center of adoption is Black and Latino innovators and entrepreneurs and creators who are fueling this, right? Why isn't there also, as we're having those conversations, why aren't we also having conversation about how we actually create capital for entrepreneurs, how we provide money for training for entrepreneurs, money for financial literacy to offset risks, right? And those conversations, and I propose them, how do we innovate the 7A loan program so that it can actually work for entrepreneurs of color who are leveraging not just blockchain, but AI, VR. And so now you have a situation where, the Democratic White House has to walk back why they were meeting with the CEO of FTX. Because, and I want to know, where were their meetings with the Black leaders in crypto? Because if you were meeting with him, and now you want to say it was about the pandemic, well, why the hell would you be meeting with this 30-year-old about the pandemic, right? Same thing with, I have to say Maxine Waters as well, right? You were chair, and during that whole time, we were trying to get her to have a diversity hearing so that the House Financial Services could actually hear from Black and Latino leaders, hear about. That never happened. And we had great staffers who actually, proposed it, and it did not happen. And so we need to hold members of Congress accountable for the future, and especially the members of Congress who say they're on our side. I get the fact that, it's harder for them because they need campaign dollars, but when you are actively ignoring the nerve center of adoption, where the people who we've been told, get an education, right? Focus on empowerment, right? Become entrepreneurs. Did that, done. Now that we're doing that, we need you to back us up with policies that help us. And you're just like, oh, I'll be right here with these wealthy white men who are, it's like, wait, what? Because so as we look at, policy and where we go from here, what I need is for more people to run for office. Right now, we have a Congress that is primarily over 65. right? And I don't believe in ageism, because right now we have 4 generations that are dominating the society. Let's be honest, boomers control the world, right? I'm a Gen Xer. We are powerful, but we are a small generation. Millennials like yourself, you guys are powerful. Gen Z, the people in college and high school right now, oh my God, out of control. There's a Gen Z member of Congress. So right now we have 4 generations that are powerful, that are trying to influence society. So I'm not saying, we need to get rid of the old people in Congress, but in Congress, because there are no term limits, people just hold on to their seats like it's their birthright. And as a result, we don't have change. But as a result, you get a seat in Congress and you just don't leave. And what happens is you do become complacent. You do get caught up. And until we actually elect new leaders, and that means for people who do want change, you need to challenge some of these members. And some of them, we respect them, we honor them, we give them deference. Let's make them president of University X. Let's make them president of that nonprofit. Right now, we need warriors fighting for the congressional districts that are struggling. You mentioned where you are in San Antonio, and the help that some of your fellow constituents need. Think of all of these other communities out there. We can no longer afford to, put people in seats just because we respect them. No, they need to be in congressional seats because they are fighting every day, because they are expending their political capital for their constituents.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the things that I do, maybe subconsciously, almost every time we have the show, is I deal with like this age issue, and there are generational tensions that we have, and they are not just among Black folks and brown folks. I mean, I think all of the communities, regardless of it, are going through some generational tensions. I just feel like if Black folks, if we can get this generational thing right, like we have an advantage. And even in a community where I live, man, we see, man, it's hard to get some of the boomers, man, to get on board with getting stuff done. It is. It's almost like they are content with the status quo in some ways, and don't approach. I would say Gen X. They don't approach millennials or Gen Z in a way that acknowledges the brilliance and even the wisdom that exists in the generations that are coming after them. And so I'm glad that you brought that up. I want to use this time to give the folks in the audience, I know some people have left, an opportunity to ask their questions. So if you have a question that you want to ask, you can raise your hand and I'll allow you to talk, and you can unmute, or you can type it in the chat and Cleve will answer your question. But in order to give you all time to do that, if you want to think about your question, Cleve, I want to ask this question of you. So we start off functioning like a book club, and I know we talked a little bit about your book here, and you mentioned the book that you have upcoming. What other readings, or what are some things that you've read that have inspired you, kept you going, or have made you more aware of what's happening in the crypto space, blockchain technology, what have you?
Yeah, I would say, one thing that people must read, they should read the white paper. It's, when you print it, it's about 7 pages. You can get it on bitcoin.com. Just Google Bitcoin white paper. I think if you're in crypto, interested in crypto, you have to start there. It will give you it's a sobering view of the industry. Crypto is really not that sexy, people, right? And wherever it's positioned as sexy, then you're probably in a lot of FOMO space that is like very superficial. Right? So I would tell people to start by reading the white paper. It's an easy read, but it's a good read that gives context for the origins of this space. And then I would say to read The Internet of Money. The Internet of Money is by Andreas Antonopoulos. So The Internet of Money, is a quick read by Andreas. He's written quite a few books on crypto. he's brilliant. And so, but the Internet of Money just talks about how we have been digitizing money for a long time, right? That, this is, that, and it's actually collections of various writings, but he puts crypto in context because the reality is we have been digitizing money for a long time. When you think of credit cards, when credit cards came about, that was a revolutionary concept because let's be honest, your credit limit is fictitious.
Yeah.
American Express does not have a pot of money,
Yep.
in there saying, oh, this is such and such as limit, right? So just that whole concept of, oh, we're going to create a card, give people a card, and they're going to buy off of this. And so that was a way to digitize money. Stocks and bonds are a way to digitize money. So the Internet of Money, I think, is a great book to read. And then, Isaiah Jackson wrote Bitcoin and Black America. I think people should absolutely read that. We have quite a few books within our communities, but I think what Zay did, and he goes by Bitcoin Zay.
That's right.
But Bitcoin and Black America is a good place to start.
I'm sorry. We actually had him on the podcast like a year and a half, 2 years ago. And that book is it's a quick read. Yeah. It like breaks things down. And even if you all look at the Entrepreneurial Appetite episode with him, he gives some really insightful perspective on leveraging Bitcoin for liberation.
Yeah, no, Zay is brilliant. And he is, he definitely is very passionate about the space as well. But I would also, encourage people to look up Guapcoin by Tavonia Evans, right? Just the whole concept of a cryptocurrency for the Buy Black movement, for empowerment. I do think that, she has really framed, Guapcoin in such a structure around education. And so I would check that out too.
All right. So we do have one question in the Q&A. It's from Deverick. And he says that he enjoyed the book. Thank you for speaking to us tonight. And he wants to know what strategic partnerships and activities are the Blockchain Foundation involved in currently or planning to educate and engage the Black community about blockchain technology?
Well, thank you for your question. The Blockchain Foundation is not necessarily focused on diversity. So for the last 4 years, I've been partnering with the Blockchain Association. The Blockchain Association is the largest advocacy group for crypto in Washington, D.C. And so in 2021, we recognized a need for a nonprofit arm for the industry that would really focus on education, by educating the public, engaging. So when the Blockchain Association represents over 100 companies, all of the big companies from Ripple to, Digital Currency Group to, just about all of them, Grayscale, are part of the Blockchain Association. So the Blockchain Foundation is the sister entity, although we are a nonprofit separate because the association is a C6. So the goal of the foundation is education. It's education, education, education. Educating the public, educating leaders of public institutions, academics, entrepreneurs. So right now, next week, we are going to be launching our first white paper, which is on financial literacy. We're making the case that financial literacy is the first line of defense against scams, right? As people are, as people say that, crypto is risky, how do we help them to protect themselves is financial literacy. So in this white paper that we're officially releasing next week, although we've teased it out to some key leaders, the white paper really makes the case that we need to be teaching digital assets in schools, but we need personal financial education across all of the K-12 public schools, but certainly in high schools, and we need mayors and governors to take the lead. So that's an example of one of the things we are in the process of launching. The white people really looks at a lot of key trends, and we're hoping, and it includes policy recommendations, and we're excited about that. We have formed a relationship with the Consumer Reports. As you know, Consumer Reports, does assessments of, vacuums and, appliances. Now they created a division that's going to be looking at fintechs and digital assets and these new tools, right? We know, wallets, fintech apps are being used by people. So how do you create a way to, assess them and provide context for people, which, for us as the foundation is really about education is important. So how can we build in financial literacy as we're creating new fintech and digital tools? So we're thrilled to collaborate with, Consumer Reports on that. And the Aspen Institute is working on on a new concept of creating a presidential commission on financial inclusion, which, aligns with the goals of the foundation. So we've been collaborating with them on how to move that forward. So for the foundation, April is Financial Literacy Month. So this April we'll be doing our inaugural conference that we'll be doing every April going forward, a full one-day conference. So we can have these conversations about risks and how to protect consumers and how to educate consumers. And so we have a lot of exciting things coming up this year. But the good thing is our programming, is available to all people of color, women, academics, because we want to be a resource, a safe place for people, for newbies to learn, but for people to actually get sound information, not just on what this thing is, but what are some of the resources for them to mitigate risk.
So, Cleve, I want to thank you for joining us today. I'm going to ask everyone who's still here to stay with us, because I'm going to give a preview of what we have coming up next. Cleve, if you want to leave now, you're more than welcome to do so. I appreciate you coming and dropping this knowledge with us. And if those of you who are hanging around, give me 2 seconds and I'll share my screen and I'll show you what we have coming next week.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, everybody. So next week, we're continuing the conversation about Black folks and blockchain technology, and a conversation with Professor Tanya Evans, who's a law professor at Penn State University. And she's going to be talking to us about intellectual property and NFT. So we're going to have a much more narrow and specific conversation about NFTs and the law, and how it affects us in terms of protecting our goods and services and things like that with her. Also want to note that we're going to have another conversation later on this month with a brother by the name of Izzo Wayne, who is the founder of a company called Bloxtel's, brand new, that does work at the intersection of blockchain technology and telecommunications. One of the things that I meant to mention earlier is that my wife and I, and I'm not suggesting that you all do this as financial advice or anything like that, but my wife and I have invested in a company called Helium. And what they have done is work to create a decentralized wireless network. And so there's a whole community of people who are working in and using blockchain technology to do some amazing things when it comes to other aspects of technology. And so I actually met Izzo at a conference for Helium this summer. And so he's going to offer some insights about another way that we think about using blockchain technology beyond just the currencies, but actually some of the applications. And we're going to end the month with a very special conversation with an angel investor by the name of Preston James, who is the founder of Div Inc., which is an incubator and supporter of Black, minority, and women-owned businesses. That will be a hybrid event. So Black men who live in San Antonio are invited to come and register for the in-person portion of it. We'll be having lunch, we'll be fellowshipping with one another, and then we will share the hybrid space with anyone who's interested in joining the conversation later on in the second half of that event. So looking forward to you all joining those. And if you want to become a supporter of Entrepreneurial Appetite ongoing. You can become one of our founding 55 patrons for $5 a month. You will get access to our ongoing conversations. You'll get early access to the recordings when they're edited and posted as podcasts and videos. And the money for the founding 55, I want to use to allocate to hire a Black intern and teach them how to do the editing and the production side of a podcast. And so I want to teach somebody some of the skills that they can use and monetize later on in their career, while also making the editing a little bit easier for myself. So all the work, all the support that you all give goes to support the work that we do here at Entrepreneurial Appetite, to support building community, promoting intellectualism, and supporting Black businesses. So thank you all for joining us today.